Good morning, Eastern North Carolina. My name is Emily McAllister. I am a local real estate agent and your local expert, and also your host for the pilot episode of a new venture called The Current. We are going to start off with our sponsors for this morning, which are West Park Motor Company at 4030 U.S. Highway 264 in Washington, and Tethered Cocktail and Dessert Bar in downtown Winterville on Railroad Street. So make sure you stop by and support those local businesses as they are supporting me in this new adventure. We are going to cover a couple of the different things this morning. We are going to talk about a couple of things that are happening in and around Greenville as far as development with new apartments. We've got Troy Dreyfus on the phone. We're going to discuss the demolition of the pickleball courts downtown and the construction of 72 new townhomes in that same location. We are also going to chat really quickly about a new bill that is being passed around in the North Carolina General Assembly that would potentially require municipalities to allow the construction of ADUs, or an accessory dwelling unit. And then we're also going to chat about the Ayden Lamp Fiasco that happened online over the past week or so, and me making people really angry over my opinion on the Zaxby's rebrand. Really quick, just a quick housekeeping item. A few weeks ago, on the most recent episode of the On the Record podcast, we interviewed Andrew Schmidt, who is the president of Greenville Convention and Visitors Bureau, and he sent me a follow-up email right before Jimmy, Mr. Beast, filmed the Beast Games here in Greenville, and said that so far his economic impact for the state, now this is statewide, this is not just for Pitt County, was $75 million. And like I said, that is before he filmed Beast Games over Memorial Day weekend. I know there was a lot of content or discussion online about the pickleball courts being demolished off of Dickinson Avenue. And we've got Troy Dreyfus on the phone, and we're rolling with it with him on speakerphone. We tried to set it up through the headphones, and it just was not working. Our equipment was not cooperating. But Troy, are you there?
I am. How are you doing, Emily?
I'm doing well. How are you doing this morning?
Doing good. And as you know, I spent 30 years doing live TV and radio in my past career. And I know the challenges you guys that are faced. So I commend you on this new project, and wish you all the best. And look, these things will get worked out over time, but it's a lot easier. It sounds a lot easier than it is. I know it's difficult doing live stuff like this, but I really commend you guys for trying something new here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a little nerve-wracking. It's not totally foreign, obviously, because I'm not, a stranger necessarily to being on camera, but the live structure is, it's more intense than I thought it was going to be.
That's a different element. There's no do-over here.
No, Thankfully, I'm not watching whatever the feed may be on the other end as far as who's looking at it and what the comments are. Yeah. So I'm none the wiser as of the moment. It's just me.
Look at the comments.
Yeah.
That's my rule. Don't ever look at the comments.
I don't know that I can
be one of your first guests.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me.
Of course. All right. Well, so talk to us about what's going on downtown. I know obviously there was mixed feedback online about what was going on, but to my understanding, the pickleball courts that were there, that were inside, they were always, inside and outside, they were always meant to be temporary.
That is 100% correct. They were never long-term. And first of all, let me tell you how this whole thing started. And I've really got to give credit to Thomas Taft. We were having breakfast, probably a couple years ago at this point, at the Scullery downtown. He's like, hey, we own this property. We're going to be building townhomes on it, which is what's going on today. This project's been delayed. Instead of the property just sitting there for a year and a half or however long it was going to be, or a year, he said, what if we utilize some of this and we can put pickleball courts inside this empty building that he had, and a few of at that time was a private parking lot just for that he owned. It was not a city-owned lot. And I thought it was a great idea. Obviously, my kids play pickleball. I play pickleball. I keep up with trends. It's the fastest growing sport, I believe, in America by some accounts. So I see what happens on Elm Street. Those courts stay absolutely mobbed while the tennis courts are open. And I grew up as a tennis player. So I've seen the trend go to pickleball from tennis. And I've seen a lot of young people now picking up pickleball. So I thought it was a great idea. So we joined forces with him at Taft Family Ventures, and Invest Greenville was also a part of it. And kind of all three of us came together. And Thomas, they're in the building business. This is what they do. And when he puts his mind to something, it can happen quickly. And these courts got done first of all, it's very expensive to do pickleball courts. That price went out because I was like, oh, this would be cool to have in my backyard. And then I realized how expensive they are. I'm like,
right.
Hold off a little bit. But he spent a lot of money, and we partnered with him on that too. But he got it done very quickly, let me say. But I remember telling him, I was like, Thomas, I love the idea. And I think people, once they find out about it, they're going to get hooked on it. I said, the first thing that's going to happen is people are going to be upset you're removing a few parking spots. And then once they get over that, they forget about that, they'll love the pickleball courts. And then they're going to get upset. The pickleball courts are gone because new townhomes are going there. And that's exactly what happened.
Right.
He wanted to do it to show a proof of concept, to say, you know what, let's see if there's a demand, if people would use it. If they do, then maybe we can incorporate that in other areas or possibly another park somewhere. So I think that's the ultimate proof of concept, that area for that was very successful. It was always built as temporary, but it was kind of an experiment to see, could that work? Obviously for him, and he owns the property, that's the highest and best use for that property, and anyone in business and building understands that.
Of course.
But that doesn't mean there can't be, or we cannot find an area somewhere else to, what I envision. I told him I'd love to have the downtown pickleball club, and we find an area and we could build it out and do, like a pickleball club downtown with multiple courts inside and out. But that's kind of a dream I have. I got to get the right partner.
The city owns that parcel at the corner of Atlantic and Dickinson that they've been trying to figure out what to do with, that we made the YMCA video on.
And yes, and that comes down, and we've talked to other developers, and I think that area has now, with the revitalization of Dickinson Avenue, once was tucked away and no one really knew about, that's becoming a really hot piece of property. And we've met with multiple developers that are interested in that spot and other spots around downtown. And unfortunately, I think for pickleball, that comes under is that the highest and best use of that area? And I think there's a reason cities do parks, because developers don't make money on parks.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think that area will be turned into a park. I think there's too much potential interest for major development there. It's too big of a piece of a land. So although you're right, if you just looked at it on the surface, oh, here's a great area. There's too many other things in place right now that are being talked about for that area for it to go there. So, and that's the other problem downtown. The great news is that we have a lot of interest going on with development downtown, and a lot of people taking a look at some different things and some transformational projects, quite honestly. But pickleball courts take up space. You have to have room. And that is something that, I'll work with the city on. Hey, and maybe we can't have this huge downtown pickleball club, but could we incorporate a court or two into different projects or different areas?
Right.
So even if it's a pocket park type of deal, and the city's been great about that. They've added some. I know there's one there's like this mini park off of First Street. I forget the name of it, but they added a pickleball court or two there.
I didn't know that.
That's kind of like a secret one no one knows about.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It's in it's what you refer to as the grid area. But it's off of First Street, and it's back there. I'll have to find the name for you, but it's this little mini park inside of a neighborhood. But they put I believe they put a pickleball court or two there. And then, of course, the ones on Elm Street are very popular. But so it's, I would love to see, even as Thomas, unfortunately, he doesn't have room with this development, but it would have been great. Like, if there was space, he could have incorporated that into an amenity for people that live there.
Right. So what is going there? It's 72, what they're defining as luxury apartments. It's going to be 1 and 2 bedroom units. And then I think there was also some concern that in tearing down the building that A Time for Science was in, that A Time for Science has somehow been harmed in this. But I just want to clarify that A Time for Science moved permanently to the Cupola building, and so that they are good over there. And I guess they have struck some sort of deal with the Cupola building that there will be a clubhouse and a gym in the basement of the Cupola building for the residents of this development. Am I following that correctly?
Yeah, you're accurate. I think there was some misinformation on that. The Time for Science had moved some time ago, the cupola building a while ago, and that's actually owned by Taft Family Ventures too. It's the same group doing the development. So they moved them in there a while ago. That's what enabled those pickleball courts to be able to go in there, because it was an empty building. It was just a shell.
Right.
So they've already been there, which is great for them. But that building's huge.
Yeah.
I believe it's an old church.
The cupola building is great. I had never been into Time for Science until I want to say maybe last fall or early this spring, and it's actually a really neat little spot. I'm shocked that I had never been in there.
It's a cool space, and they do have a lot of room underneath, so there is talk about, for the residents, building some amenities for them because it's adjacent to the property. Right there where they're building these new townhomes.
Well, I mean, what are your thoughts on what this does for the landscape of that stretch of Dickinson? There was a comment on Facebook that I thought was entertaining because somebody had posted in support of it. And the comment said, "Serious question, is this satire?" And I just found humor in that. But I mean, I personally think that this is a good thing for that stretch of Dickinson Avenue to get residents down there, and because residents mean foot traffic.
Exactly. And I think, you have to take with a grain of salt Facebook comments. I mean, anybody can post anything at any time. I think that sometimes you just have to filter those out a little bit as far as, anyone can have an opinion, and nowadays anyone's opinion can be out there at any time, which is fine. But that doesn't mean, just because it's an opinion doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's someone's opinion. In my opinion, this is a great thing for downtown. I think it will change the landscape of Dickinson Avenue. The reason I'm excited about it is because I know and work with the folks at Taft Family Ventures. They build across the Southeast, but they're headquartered, guess where? On Dickinson Avenue. They have one of the nicest headquarters, one of the nicest buildings in Greenville. Their whole operation is centered in our downtown area. We're blessed to have them as a partner with us. So this building footprint is literally across the street from their headquarters. So damn well that they want to make sure this project is a showpiece, because their reputation and brand is with this too.
Of course.
They want to minimize any potential harm. And we've met with them about this to neighbors. And this is not going to be like the DOT street project. This is going to be contained. It's going to be quick. It's going to be well done. It's going to be professional. But when it's done, these are going to be really high-end, classy-looking townhomes. And I think we've got plenty of student housing downtown. I was a student at East Carolina. I lived downtown. I loved it. I lived at a place called Ringgold Towers when I was in school. I would have killed to have places like they have now in the amenities of the student housing. But we're good on student housing. I feel that we're at for what we need on student housing, especially in the downtown area. What there is a lack of, Emily, is housing for people like you or me.
Right.
People that are out of school, working professionals,
well,
that want to be in a walkable area that can have all the excitement and the vibrance of a downtown area. That is lacking right now.
Greenville has always struggled to retain that, 25 to 40 age demographic with when people graduate and then, they get jobs and they start families, or they don't start families and they're just young professionals and they, want all of the benefits and the amenities of, like you said, being in a larger city, but they enjoy the price point that is afforded to them in Eastern North Carolina. And so I think that this is definitely a step in that direction. My only other thing would be, obviously I make my money selling houses. And so I would love to see more development projects going on downtown that are for sale, like condos for owner occupied residents. I don't know if you know of anything that might be in the works like that on the horizon.
I could not agree with you more. That is one of the top requests I get, is from people and even working professionals, sometimes empty nesters that want to live in the downtown area. Probably one of the biggest things we are lacking is a chance to own your own townhome, let's say, or apartment there. There's a few, but none are on the market, and they're very hard to come by. And, and the Taft family model is they own and they lease. That's their business model. That's their right. And they do it very professional. And you'll be able to live downtown. You just won't be able to own it. If you want to buy and own, which I would love to, and be able to invest in something like that, that unfortunately that product doesn't exist. Now that's a great opportunity for somebody to build something like that, in my opinion. But it takes, Emily, as you know, being in real estate, takes the right person with the right finances and the right development mind to be able to do that and to be able to secure the property. So that is a huge opportunity for somebody. I get requests like that all the time. It's right now, I can't fill them. There's nowhere to put folks that want to buy like that. And unless someone develops something like that, we just don't have that available currently.
Right. Well, the only other thing I'll say, and I'll let you go and get on about your Friday, is there was another piece of feedback online about if in trying to create a walkable area of the community, having things like grocery stores and bodegas and public transportation. Obviously, you have the bus station down there, but other things that make it to where people actually can walk and get to the things that they need. What, if any, kind of influence does Downtown Greenville Partnership have in trying to recruit some of that stuff?
A lot. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I will just say this. Those thoughts and conversations, they're not just, we just don't have them as comments, that's reality that I live. I've met with developers on site with the highest levels of city leadership, actively recruiting folks that are in that industry, in that business, that are interested in downtown Greenville to do those things. So I don't want to get into the specifics because nothing is definite, but I think it's fair to say those conversations and those meetings and those recruiting trips are going on now and have already happened and will be continual. Because you look at the difference, like the downtown hotel makes, the Hilton Garden Inn downtown. It's the first hotel we've had downtown. It's been a huge success. They stay occupied. It's brought a lot of people to the downtown area, created a lot of foot traffic that we normally wouldn't have, like for visitors like that. And now there's a need for a second, or as I say, even a third hotel. There's enough demand for that. So we have people looking at that. We have people, there could be a possible grocery store. There's all these things that are being looked at of what are these holes that could be plugged that would be good. And also, as you mentioned, walkable community. And I think as downtown grows, the connectivity between all the areas is there, between First Street to Fifth Street to Dickinson. It really is all walkable. And I think as these developments happen, and some of them will be transformational, but just like the hotel, that started with an idea and a conversation, but it took 5 years to get out of the ground. Hopefully some of these other things we can do quicker because now people are seeing the success that these businesses are having.
Right.
And you want to talk about the ultimate proof of concept. The hotel is not some AI program. It's real world. People can see, and especially the folks that are behind that know, hey, this has worked out great. And maybe Greenville is the place to be right now, and we want to invest again in Greenville. So those conversations are happening. And the only downside is, I come from the private sector, and now I'm kind of working in the semi-public sector area. It just doesn't happen as fast sometimes as you can do things in the private sector. So I'd love to snap my fingers and have all these things ready next week. And unfortunately, it just doesn't, there's a lot of people you got to work with and a lot of things you've got to get done before these things can happen. But I will say Greenville is a welcoming environment, and everybody's on the same page to roll out the red carpet to these developers and make it easy on them where they want to do business here.
Right.
Where they're invited to do business here. And we're removing the hurdles and say, hey, we want to partner with you. We want you to invest in our community. And that's great to see from my perspective, is how everyone really comes together, whether it's from our organization to the city to Invest Greenville and the folks that are in leadership positions. Everybody's on the same page with this. So right. Those things will happen. I truly believe that. I just don't know the timeline quite yet.
Well, it's just good to hear that obviously the city and all of the people that are involved in making some of those decisions hear the feedback. These things are not new to you guys. I'm going to step out on a limb and feel confident in speaking for you, and that all of that type of, concern and feedback from the general public, these are all things that, like you said, that those conversations are already being had. So I really appreciate it, Troy. Thank you so much for experimenting with me this morning. And
absolutely. I would love to come back anytime. You guys just let me know.
Sure. Thanks so much. Have a good rest of your day.
Okay, take care.
Appreciate it. Bye. Okay. So all of that is good news, meaning all of the feedback that is being had online regarding concerns about walkability and parking and all of that stuff. None of that is news to the people that are in charge and that are working to try to make downtown to capitalize on all of the opportunity down there. Troy mentioned, obviously, there potentially could be a demand for additional hotels. The corner of Reed Circle and Evans, that was just acquired by an LLC that seems to be potentially leaning towards a hotel in that location where the little Thai restaurant, or I don't know if it was a Thai restaurant. I don't know if anybody knows. I think it was a Thai restaurant on the corner right there, directly across from the boundary. So those things are already in the works and on the horizon. Some other things that are on the horizon as possibility regarding development is a bill that is being passed around in the North Carolina General Assembly right now that looks like it has pretty strong potential for some version of this bill to be passed. It's Senate Bill 445. It's being titled the Regulatory Reform Bill. And there's a bunch of stuff in this bill about healthcare and education, but there's a tiny little section in there under Section 14 that talks about something called an ADU. And an ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. And local governments have historically been not real keen on allowing the development of an ADU. Most townships and municipalities, especially those that are not metro areas, really do not like high density housing. They want to try to stay away from that. And ADUs obviously increase the density of your housing because it is a separate dwelling that is either attached or detached from a primary residence. So you would see something like this if you had a mother-in-law suite would be an ADU, or if you had, an au pair. If you're fancy enough to have an au pair and you want your au pair to live on site, things of that nature. So the specifics of this bill are, first and foremost, this would only apply to cities throughout the state that have a population of 50,000 people or more, which means that it basically does not apply to the vast majority of Eastern North Carolina. Really, the only cities it would apply to would be Greenville, Jacksonville, and Wilmington. So New Bern, Emerald Isle, Morehead City, all of those places that really probably could benefit from some higher density housing because the housing value has increased so substantially over the last few years. It would not apply to those areas. But this bill would essentially require cities to allow the construction of an ADU anywhere where single family homes are already allowed and the zoning allows for that. So a couple of things that it would require of local governments is that it would say that the local government cannot prohibit the use of a long-term rental in the ADU or in the primary residence. So if I had a house and I built an ADU on my house, the local government would not be able to tell me that I cannot rent my ADU in a long-term rental. Now, they may be able to tell me I can't rent to a short-term rental, but not long-term rental. It also would mean that you cannot require an additional conditional zoning district. Local governments would not be able to do that. They would not be able to establish some sort of minimum parking requirement, and they would not be allowed to prevent you from connecting the ADU to the utilities of the primary residence so long as there was capacity able to withstand that. They can't charge any fees in excess of what it would be to just build a single family home, and they can't tell you that the structure has to be less than 800 square feet or more than 1,000 square feet. What the local governments would be able to do is impose a setback or require that an ADU be constructed to the side or behind of the main structure, and require that the ADU be smaller than the primary residence. So those are kind of the general parameters under which that would apply if this version of the bill proceeds and is presented into law. The exceptions to that, because there is always exceptions, would be if the HOA language or the restrictive covenants in your subdivision override the ability to construct an ADU, and then it wouldn't apply to anything in a historic district or that is deemed a historical landmark. So, for example, in Greenville, I say, for example, scratch that. I didn't mean to say, for example, in Greenville, the city of Greenville has adopted something called a UDO. It just went into effect a couple of months ago. I want to say the beginning of March, but a UDO is a Unified Development Ordinance. And the city of Greenville has actually already addressed the construction of ADUs. And in this Unified Development Ordinance, it has essentially streamlined what you are allowed to do by right and with permission, essentially, in each zoning district. And there are several zoning districts that with permission, the city of Greenville will allow you to construct an ADU. The bill, if passed, would mean that the city of Greenville has to allow you to construct the ADU by right. And so, for example, a couple of the different zoning neighborhoods that Greenville will allow you to build an ADU with permission would be neighborhoods like Ironwood, Bedford, Tucker Estates, Brook Valley, anything that is R20, which is a rural lot zoning, R15 or R9, which again, those are that kind of Tucker Estates, Bedford, Lindale, Ironwood, those types of developments. As of right now, the city of Greenville says you can build an ADU in those subdivisions with permission, specifically with a special use permit. But if this bill passes, it would mean that the city of Greenville would have to allow it unless your HOA covenants say that you can't. So all of that to say, if you do not want an ADU in your subdivision, now would be the time to get with your HOA and go ahead and draft the covenants that says that is not something that you want done. And I imagine that with the right amount of online attention, that particular snippet in that bill may get some pushback, similar to something that happened online earlier last week about a lamp in Ayden. I don't know if any of you watching have seen this. I personally saw it and thought this was a little nuts. But if you do not follow your local word of mouth or what's happening in Facebook page, you definitely should, because they are a goldmine of free entertainment. And this post was made, what day does that say? May 22nd. And this is about a woman who went into a local thrift shop in downtown Ayden and found her dream lamp. And the lamp had a price tag that was marked down from $25 to $15. And she wanted to buy the lamp for $15. There seemed to be very, very brief back and forth between the customer and the worker in this particular thrift store that I'm not exactly clear, like what, if any, the resolve is, other than the customer just ended up leaving and did not buy the lamp. And that was kind of here nor there. You know, the post got a good, decent amount of engagement. But what made it funnier was that after that, all of these posts about lamps just kept popping up on Facebook. There was a post, this is the state you're in, about this lamp. And I think this is the lamp. This is the specific lamp this lady was talking about that she wanted to buy. And I have no idea if this lady ended up with this lamp. I hope she did, because she really, really loved it. But I just thought that this was hilarious. And then there was another thrift store that posted and said, hey, we have lamps on sale, tons of lamps available at the Mission Thrift. So it's always interesting to me when things get posted on Facebook or in any sort of public forum, what the feedback is going to be. I am of the opinion that most things like that are just miscommunication. I don't think in that scenario necessarily either person had any sort of ill intent. I think very few times people set out with ill intent. But again, always, you never know what you're going to get. Life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, especially when you're posting stuff on social media, because you're just speaking into the abyss and you never know how people are going to respond. And that brings me to our final segment, which we are officially titling Let's Argue. I actually have a neon sign titled Let's Argue. It's like highlighter blue, and I meant to bring it, but I forgot. It was very expensive. I paid like $300 for it. It's kind of ridiculous. But I loved it, and I thought it was great, and I wanted to have it. So next segment is Let's Argue. And speaking into the abyss online got me in trouble a couple of weeks ago because I posted this picture to Facebook in which I expressed my dislike for the corporate level rebrand that took place at Zaxby's. Now, Zaxby's is a regional chain. They have over 1,000 locations across 22 different states. And it's one of my favorite fast food places. I go into Zaxby's all the time. My sister and I go into Zaxby's and eat inside all of the time. And I liked to do that because the booths were really tall and it was like being in these tiny little corners. And it was not like fluorescent lighting. It was very warm. And I just liked it. Sue me. But I went into my local Zaxby's to find this corporate rebrand rollout, and the vast majority of comments online were in agreement with me. One of them in particular said that they're pulling a Cracker Barrel, which I found hilarious because that's exactly what it is. It's like modern farmhouse rebrand for Zaxby's. And Cracker Barrel obviously rescinded their corporate rebrand because of public outcry online. And so I thought I was starting a movement, but apparently I was not. I got fussed at because in critiquing the Zaxby's corporate rebrand, there were several people that were really upset with me and said that I was harming local businesses and being negative and hurtful to the franchise owners, which I thought was crazy. Apparently the franchise owners, who I do not know, I've never met, never spoken with, are local to the area and very involved in the community. And we love that. We're super appreciative of that. I guess they do a lot of fundraiser type things and spirit nights and stuff of that nature. But I am of the opinion that a corporate entity, I should be allowed to critique a corporate entity. And so my let's argue point for this episode is, should I or anyone else, should anyone be allowed to critique a corporate entity if that corporate entity benefits local residents? I don't know. I think that's maybe a moral dilemma. If you have an Amazon warehouse in your local county, are you allowed to talk crap about Amazon because they're employing 1,500 people in your city? Am I allowed to critique any corporate location or franchise location that may by, secondhand benefit local residents? I would say that I am. I think a lot of people probably are going to say, Emily, it's not that deep. I think it's always that deep. I think the subliminal messaging in virtually everything, whether people can articulate or even realize that that they've absorbed some sort of subliminal message, it's still received and it's still internalized. And I think the subliminal message in that, which was, hey, don't say anything ugly because this may negatively affect people that are local. Don't say anything ugly about the corporate franchise because it could potentially negatively affect people that are local. I think that's a very, very slippery slope. That's just me. But what do I know? Not a whole lot, clearly. I don't know. I'm curious what the court of public opinion has to say. Last time I asked that a couple days ago, it didn't go in my favor. Maybe it won't go in my favor this time. I don't know. I tend to disagree. I think most people agree that the rebrand is bad. I will also say I've been to Zaxby's no less than half a dozen times since I posted that video. I just didn't go inside because I don't like the way it looks. And I probably won't go back inside. But I will still go through the drive-thru. And those people will still get whatever percentage of my money my $11 meal generates them. So that is all for today. Coming up over the next couple of weeks, today is the start of Big Rock Week. We are actually headed to Morehead City when we finish, and we are going to interview Harry Smith, who is the captain of the Double B. He has fished the Big Rock, I think he told me, for like the last 20 years. We're going to do a long-form documentary-style video interviewing him and highlighting how important the Big Rock is to Morehead City residents economically and just to Eastern North Carolina as a whole, because for so many local residents, it's become a family tradition of sorts. And we may not do this again. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I thought it went pretty well. Yeah. I think it could have been way worse. Yeah. My nerves are shot. I'm probably not going to look at my phone the entire rest of the day. but I don't know. Maybe we'll be back. Maybe we won't. We'll see. But thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe.